This is a recording of an NMRA-PCR Coast Division virtual event with social interactions recorded April 3rd, 2021.
So basically today we just have very quickly announcements on the convention and the return committee, and then really just bring what you're modeling. So again, the convention update, both the conventions are officially canceled as physical events. Both will be virtual. I'm going to put the PCR registration in the chat. The minute I get off this, I'll put it in. If you haven't registered, go register. It's worth. There are two reasons I'd like everybody to register. One, I think it would be great to have everybody go, that we have a good sized convention, but more importantly, love to get feedback from this group about what the experience was like. Because in many ways, this convention's a dry run for the July National Convention, both from how it's being done, but just learning how to make things work. So if you haven't registered, I'll put the registration in. It's the 24th. It starts in the morning, runs to the evening, like a typical convention. One of the cool things, if you talk to anybody about going, you can actually now go to a convention without the cost of physically traveling and staying at a hotel, et cetera. So that will be on that Saturday. One of the things for both of these, we need volunteers, less really for the PCR, more for the NMRA. And one thing that's really, really important, the volunteers things will be up on the site for the NMRA. They're already up for the PCR. There's a real difference in volunteering in a virtual convention and a real convention. In a real convention, a lot of times the volunteer jobs are separate from the activity in the convention. You're assigned to, man a desk, man the help desk, do this outside of a room. What's great about this is you're an MC, a producer, or a moderator. They're all in the clinic, listening to the clinic and watching the clinic. So even though you're volunteering and doing a role, you still can see most of the content while you're there. So again, love to have you do that. The other thing we've done, may have heard Earl and I talking about this a little bit earlier, is we'll have a return to normal committee. Our first meeting will be April 12th. I have 5 folks that have volunteered. Definitely, anyone else is open. This is really an open, I really try to look to get an open input from everyone. The other question, just a question to the membership that's here, is everybody comfortable doing some sort of an online survey? Thinking maybe about trying to put a survey out on SurveyMonkey. Questions like, how far are you willing to travel to go to events? Have you been coming to events? What caused you not? How important are things like auctions? A set of questions, trying to get a feel for the membership. Different people have strong positions, but it's nice to get kind of an overall feel. So again, if anyone's interested in participating in that, please send me an email. And then last, just for anyone who hasn't, please join the NMRA and support us and what we're doing. So that was really all I had for today. So I'll just throw it open to everyone to continue talking about modeling. We can continue to castigate the loss of facilities like fairgrounds, but or we can talk about real modeling. Fran, maybe we should go back and have your conversation about the loops here.
What? Hey, we got him. Yeah, it was muted. Have you got one in front of you?
No, I've got to go find it here. It's, bad. My bad news is you guys can, Aaron, let me put this up. Somebody else can talk about something else and we'll come back to it then. I got to put this in chat before I forget.
I can go grab one in about a minute.
So yeah, by the way, I just put the link in chat to register for the Sugar Pine.
And Phil, you got my slides for today.
Oh, I'm sure I do. Hang on. Maybe not. Hang on. Maybe they didn't end up.
I sent them 2 days ago or something.
Maybe that's why I'm not looking far enough back. There it is. This is your repowering project. Yeah.
Yes.
You want me to share them or are you going to share them?
I want you to share them so I can read my script.
Hang on.
Whenever you get to it.
Yeah, let me move these somewhere. Well, we can talk on something else, Paul. Let me move these somewhere so I can show them easier because I've got them in email right now and they're not easy to show. So
Okay, and I'm only going to need about 5-6 minutes.
oh, that's cool. That's cool. I'll
I've
let
got
Fran
a quick thing.
go for it.
A couple times ago, I mentioned that I had found some glue that passes electricity. It's called wire glue. And I finally got a chance to try it. I don't know if you can see this, but I tested it on a piece of track and it works just fine. I finally put it on my layout. I glued this to a frog for the first time and it works great. So this stuff's called Anders Products wire glue, and it's a lot easier than soldering.
How fast does it dry? Is it instantaneous or?
No, it's not instantaneous, and I haven't really tested it that way, but I suspect it's hard in about an hour.
So
I've also used it. I'm new at this, and so I've had some laying track problems where I've had minor gaps between rails, like maybe a 32nd or even a 16th of an inch. And I've used this stuff to fill those little gaps so there's not a bump in the rail. And it's electrically conductive, so they go right over it just fine without a bump. So it's useful for that too.
Is it kind of like metal flakes in an epoxy base or something like that, like a paste?
No idea what's in here. It's black. It looks like it might be graphite or something. I don't know.
And that was Anders wire glue?
Anders is called Anders Products wire glue. Yeah.
Where do you get it, John?
I just went online and looked for electrically conductive glue and came up with this and ordered it. Here's the thing. I mean, it's not real cheap. This probably cost me, I don't know, $15 or something like that. But so far, I think it's great stuff.
Thank you.
I just put a link of the manufacturer in the chat.
I glued this one about a month ago. You can see it's a pretty good grip.
You might not want to put 15 or 20 amps through it, but if you're just doing a frog or short segment of track, I suspect you'll get away with it comfortably.
Yeah, they say it's made for electronic stuff. Yeah, if a lot of heat might melt it, I suppose. So far, so good.
Why don't you put some current through it and see where it goes away?
Thank you.
Right? Not in your switch, but why don't you glue a wire to a piece of nickel silver, like scrap rail, and then put some current through it and see how well it does. If it takes 2 amps, it's probably good for anything you're going to do on track.
Yep.
Yeah, it takes at least 2 amps because I made a mistake the other day. I put a drill bit across the tracks, and I noted it because it was sparking and heating, and then I picked it up with my fingers, of course, and that glue was in there during that time, and that was 2 something amps. So it'll survive 2 amps for sure.
Well, there you go. You're a winner.
You can actually find it on Amazon for those that are interested. I just posted the link to it on Amazon.
Yeah.
So what Phil was going to talk about, I'll just save a minute here. These cable clamps. This is a pretty large one, but he's going to look at smaller ones that you pull this little lever back here, and it ratchets close on, as much or as little cable as you want. And Phil was envisioning it under the layout where you could open it up and put more wires in it and close it back.
So actually on one of the things I was on Wednesday night, one of the guys showed that, and he drilled through it and had put them on the wood and was using them as clamps to catch the cables that go between modules, for when you move them. And that's always been kind of a challenge of what do you have to hold cables up? So I thought it was kind of an interesting.
May I pitch in something on that? On a club, our club members, this was the Sonoma County Model Railroad Society visited years ago, had taken the orange plastic pipe used for feeding gas to houses, underground burial pipe. We saw what they did is they took the pipe, cut it into pieces, 45 degrees, so you had little like 3/4 inch wide slices of pipe angled. Then a cut was made on one side straight across, and then it was screwed to the bottom of the layout. And you just spread it, slipped the wire into the cut, and if you needed a lot of hangers for wires, we found it to be a cheap way to produce a boatload of wire hangers.
Is this like a Home Depot product?
Yes, sir. Yeah, just orange plastic pipe that's used for feeding, supplying cooking gas and heating gas to houses. Usually comes in a cheerful orange color. It's quite sturdy because of the duty it's expected to do. And you just hack it into pieces, drill one hole, and because you're angling it, the hole to put the screw in is accessible because you've angled it. And then you put a cut high on the side, and then you just slip wires in and out. We found that to be very nice.
I actually saw someone do the same with larger PVC pipe for more bundles. Kind of trying to think through that. We're going to use Cat 5s for the signaling and the Pleasanton layout, and went through. We're going to end up with 220 or 240 Cat 5 cables running under the layout. Well, so a signal becomes a two-headed signal because with searchlight signals, when you look at it, a two-headed signal will actually have a cable to it. Right? Because you got to support 3 LEDs. It turns out because we've got positive cathode signals, you have to have a converter, so you've got to have 12 volts and ground. So basically one signal head with 2 targets is a Cat 5 cable. If it's a 3 target, you got to have a second Cat 5 for the 3rd target. Every turnout is a Cat 5. But by doing that, by the way, think about the troubleshooting now. From your layout perspective, there's no wiring under the layout except at the endpoints. And they're all plug and play with a Cat 5. So if you want to replace something, you just unplug it and plug it back in. But the point is, then now you've got, think about it, where you come out of where your CTC equipment is, where your CRMI stuff is, you're going to have a bundle of 20 or 30 Cat 5s. And we're trying to decide, do we build trays or do we do something like that and hold them and let them kind of go underneath? So that's a really good point, the idea of the drilling. I've forgotten about that, Dave. Thank you for reminding me. Because I've been thinking about building wire trays, and it may be easier to do that, quite frankly.
You start talking about signaling, and I've become very interested in the Southern Pacific's signal maintenance crews, and they also maintain the telegraph lines for the railroad. And however, in a lot of cases, it was joint maintenance with Western Union. Part of the thing is I'm building a signal maintenance employees dwelling, which will go on my layout. And I located a whole bunch of stuff in my CSRM that pertains to this. But anyway, a model railroad sounds is much more complicated than the real railroad as far as signaling goes. That's all. End comment.
Did you have a price on those things?
I do not, because I got these probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, I can find them on Amazon. There, you can buy like 6 of them on Amazon for $6, 12. I think they may even sell them at Harbor Freight for that matter.
They look like things that we're using to attach bikes and skis to the roof racks. So,
Yeah, but they're little cheap ratchety things for cables, and they're kind of sold to group cables together, and under your desk and that. So
There's even some versions of them on Thingiverse if you're a printer, but 6 for $1 would definitely beat my hourly rate.
okay, Jim, I got everything in a position to share. So ready?
He escaped.
Oh, that was Paul. I'm sorry, it was Paul. It wasn't Jim. It was Paul.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, you ready? I'm sorry.
I was getting ready to say, are you talking to this Jim?
I was
Because this Jim
confusing
has no
myself
idea
there.
what you're
I
talking
apologize.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hang on here.
some of you may recognize my background. That's St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow in Russia. And my presentation I'm going to call From Russia with Love. Some of you may remember the Sean Connery in the 1963 movie From Russia with Love. And for us rail fans, of course, he wasn't the star. The star was the Vagon Lee train where all the action took place. So that was 1963. And that was sort of the beginning for me for N-scale too. Actually, the next year when I went to the United Kingdom as an exchange student, and I picked up my first old N-scale stuff. So what I'm going to do here is talk about something else that happened there and how that ties in, because I'm going to do a clinic on repowering a Russian locomotive. So we go to the next slide. That's the one, yeah. In that same year, in 1963, Russian railways started taking delivery on this class of locomotive, which is called a CS4. And the reason it's called that is because these were built for Russian railways and also Belarus and Ukraine by Skoda in Czechoslovakia. That's the Ch, and the S is for Skoda. And this is class number 4. They had 2 or 3 series from this manufacturer before, so this is the 4th one. And these were built in 1963 through 72, and in total ended up with a 232 unit roster for the Russian railways, which are 5-foot gauge, a little bit wider than ours. These all, this series was built to run on AC 25,000 volt, 50 hertz, and they were quite powerful. They put out 6,800 horsepower, and they were used on everything from passenger to freight trains, and could do a speed up to about 100 miles an hour. So I did a bunch of research on this because, let's go to the 3rd slide. About in the early 1970s, Pico, that's P-I-K-O, model company in East Germany, started making models of these in N-scale. And this was pretty unique. As far as I know, it's the first ever N-scale model of a Russian locomotive. And they had it in several different paint schemes. These are 2 of them. And the one on the left, the kind of brownish one, is the one that I got and that I'm going to talk about. And in doing research on these, there's a lot of information online and a lot of photographs, and I swear no 2 of those locomotives was painted the same. They're all different colors, so it's kind of interesting. So these were upgrades of earlier Skoda locomotives, and the models actually came with functioning pantographs. There was a switch underneath. You could run them off the wire on the overhead if you wanted to do that. But let's go to the next slide, number 4, and this is the look at the mechanism that's inside of them. And they were pretty crude. That's a big fat 3-pole motor. And those are big lead weights that drop in over the tops of those too. But the real problem shows up in the next slide, number 5. looking from the side, check out those wheels and those pizza cutter flanges. Those are almost a full 40 thousandths flanges, and that just didn't make it on my Code 55 track. So what I had to do was try and look for some kind of a replacement channel or chassis that I could put inside this locomotive. So go to the next slide, number 6. And on the top is the Pico mechanism, and below that is a Kato N-scale SD9 chassis. And they actually, that actually works out pretty well. This one shows it's already been converted with the side shrouds on the trucks that go on the Russian locomotive. And but it turns out that this was very, very close in the length of both the trucks and the center line spacing between the two pivot points. And so I went ahead and found one for cheap on eBay that I'm using as a conversion. So it used to be Conrail, now it's going to be CommiRail. So if we go to the next one, slide 8. This is the two of them laying face to face, so you can see how the sizes are going to fit inside the chassis. And because the Russian locomotive has a full width cowl, and the SD9, of course, has a narrow one, there's lots of extra space in there, which I had to work at to fill up to make it line up and go on top. So if we can go to the next slide. This is a look at the top of the inside. This is the inside of the Russian shell. And if you can look up in sort of in each corner, you'll see I've put in some plastruct T shapes and a couple of small pieces of plastic on the inside of where the fuel tank would have been on the side. And these, yeah, that's perfect. This gives me the width that I need to fit over the Kato one, and then the ones on the side give me the registration for the length on it. Now, the other thing that happened was on the Pico model, the pilots were mounted to the trucks so that they would swivel. But when I converted it, I cut those off and body mounted them to the body of the shell so that only the truck pivots. And you notice on the left-hand end, I've maintained the original Arnold style coupler, but on the right-hand end, I've converted it to a microtrains coupler. And that's because I'm in the process of converting my rolling stock. I've got some of each for that, but it's an easy conversion. It's just a drop-in of an 1128 conversion into the coupler box. So that's an easy one. So let's go to number 9. And there is the Kato chassis dropped into the Pico shell. And it actually works quite well. Of course, the Kato is a really good, smooth running locomotive. So going to number 10, here's the locomotive, and it's with a Russian passenger train. Those coaches are also from the old Pico range, and they had really nasty wheels in them too. But I found that the freight truck wheels that Graham Farish in the UK uses on their British stock snap right in there, and they're the right diameter and the right axle length. So now I've got a good running Russian passenger train. And this one, of course, is parked somewhere completely different at my Taiwan station. And then finally, number 12, it also looks good on a Russian freight train. And those cars came from a company called Red Star Models that was run by Chris White for a long time back in the Timonium, Maryland area. He used to show up there. Those are resin cast kits of Russian rolling stock that he did. He also did a fantastic line and still does on special order of HO Russian prototype models if anybody is interested in that. So that was my conversion kit. And actually, once I got it all planned out and had everything together, it only took about 2 or 3 hours to do all the work on it, because it was a pretty straightforward, easy thing. And now I've got a Russian train And that works well with my Asian Rail group because most of the land area of Russia is actually in Asia. And these things did run on the Trans-Siberian line. So kind of a unique addition to my collection. So hope you enjoyed that.
Hey, Paul, question on the skirts. Do you know the logic on the skirts on the trucks? Was it aesthetic or was there a
well, they
more
were
practical?
static. If you go back to the second slide, you can see it was solid. But the reason that the model did it is because having the shrouds on the side, yeah, you can see on the blue one, yeah, and there's the prototype. They're all solid. And I don't know particularly why they did it. It might have just been a design thing. And of course, in the prototype, the trucks don't have to pivot that far as
Right.
much as they do on the model.
Yeah, it's different coming with the shroud kind of coming down this far past the wheels.
Yeah,
most of our locomotives, the wheels were much more exposed.
Right. So yeah, I don't know if there was a practical reason for doing that in the design or not.
Russian rail fans get excited if you show too much ankle.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be. Oh, another thing that's interesting, if you notice the coupler on there, that's the Russian automatic coupler, the SA3 style. But it sure looks a whole lot like a microtrains coupler, the way it's designed. So the model coupler actually looks pretty close to the prototype.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have any idea what the
comrade.
do you have any idea what the shell is made of? It's a very interesting
Yes, actually, that's quite interesting because there's also a Czechoslovak version of this locomotive that ran on their standard gauge, and they call it a laminatka, meaning laminated, and it's laminated fiberglass. At least on the cab part. Yeah. Now I do have a couple pictures of a couple wrecks where these were involved, and the sides kind of fell off, so it looks like some of the side sheeting may have been steel. But the cab fronts are laminated fiberglass.
In other words, it's the Corvette of railroad engines.
Yeah, right. It kind of is. Yeah.
I'll remark, you say it was pretty easy, but frankly, I think your skill made it look easy to do that conversion.
Well, it's just, I probably spent 10 times as much time planning how to do it as it took to actually do it. And I've got a couple other projects in the works, which I'll share with you down the line when I get them done. A couple more Russian ones.
Excellent, Paul. That was great.
Yep.
Many commendations, comrade.
beautiful modeling. Paul, how did you get an interest in Russian railroading?
Well, actually, I've always had an international interest in it. I've done a lot of stuff and been an exchange student and all that kind of stuff. So this was going way back to the beginning of N-scale, essentially, in the 60s and early 70s. And Pico had this unique stuff, and I was doing all kinds of European stuff at the time. I was doing a lot of Swiss and British stuff and everything. So I've always had an international interest, and this was really unique. So I thought I would just pick some of that up, and then did some of the research on it and found out about Russian railways. And it's a huge network, as it has to be for a country that size. So I just added that to my international interest.
I thought that was cool. That's great. Nice change,
Yeah, something different.
So if you're interested, I'll show one project that I've been working on. So I think I showed what I was doing before, but it's kind of interesting. So I'm building this commercial hotel, which is in 1897. This was built in Boulder Creek. It was right across from the station on the South Pacific coast. So if you look here, I'm doing this with the Bar Mills 1 kit, which comes with the walls and the windows, which actually are pretty appropriate for this. But this is the front to the right here to the salon or saloon. And so I pull in on that a little bit. I was trying to figure out how to do this, and clearly you can't do that with stuff that kind of comes in standard windows. So I decided that it looked like it might be interesting to try to 3D print just that part, cut the wood wall out where it is, and put an insert in. So what I did I got to take off my background. I'm sorry. Can't do this stuff with your background on. So what I've done is this is actually the wall. So if you look at that, you're looking at it from the outside. This is the big window. These are the doors, and this is the little window over. It's designed to go right in the corner of the building because when the building was built, it ended right there. So that's actually a support piece to support the wall coming at the 90-degree angle. And then what I've done is on the inside, because it's all going to be very visible, I'm actually 3D printing walls for the interior, and you really can't see these. They kind of have, I get it right, you can kind of see their grooves cut into them, and it's actually like printed trim. And then this piece fits in on the inside like this, and it overlaps, so it'll actually glue to the wood. So I'll have trim on the outside and this on the inside, so you'll never really see that frame. But what I was doing was looking at this, and I was trying to figure out how in the heck do I put window mullions in that? And it hit me that if you look on the side there, I don't know if you can see this, kind of the focus, there's two little hole lines there. Can you see them? And anyway, what that let me do, this was my trial, is that let me put 0.015 wire in through those holes, and they're actually soldered where they come together. And then this is actually cut in the back in the, I don't know if you, I guess, not getting very good light here on this, but it's actually cut to have the glass insert, and it'll lay right against the mullions. So with that, what I was able to do is go back to the pictures. If you look here, you can see the mullions in that one, but if you look up here in this image, you can really see them right here. So it's these thin mullions and trying to, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Help if I shared. So these thin mullions right here on the window, you can see how thin those are. And what this does is it actually allows me to actually replicate those in a way they won't break. So anyway, I thought that was a pretty cool little project.
Very interesting.
I have a few slides to inflict on you gentlemen, if I can put myself in queue.
Absolutely, and it is open to share.
All right, let me see here. First of all, find the application.
Actually, just share your if your upper right screen's your desktop, and it's almost always better just to share your desktop, just because that way you don't lose something behind. And
right. Okay, I'll do the share screen here. One
the
moment.
upper left, yeah. Upper left is the desktop.
Yep.
Where you see us. Actually, let me unspot myself. I'm spotlighted here.
Oh God. Come on. Oh, for God's sake! I have a security thing I have to take care of.
Oh, that's right. You must have an Apple machine.
Yes, sir.
That's happened before.
Yeah. There.
See, Bob's in the background madly building here.
Okay, I have to quit Zoom and restart it.
Okay, we'll see you in a moment.
I have a share.
Super, Fred, go for it.
I made a little camera car recently.
This is that 80-year-old man.
Oh. Got a little camera up in front and a battery and the transmitter and an on and off switch. And I mounted it on just a flat car. I originally put these sideways, and I found it was too wide, so I had to remount them vertically so they would fit through my through the mountains and the tunnels. But it works pretty well. I just made it out of some stuff I had around.
Cool. What's the camera?
I don't know. I got it as a Christmas present a couple of years ago. Just a little, says ready-made RC.
It was originally given to me for an RC car, and it's just a small camera about an inch, maybe a little more, inch and a quarter wide or square.
Ready Made RC is a company that sells components for people who fly model airplanes and want to have vision systems on their model airplanes.
Oh, it probably is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
Oh,
like a
yeah.
drone. It looks like a drone
It's
camera.
really neat.
What do you use as a receiver for the other end?
Oh, I have a wireless receiver. I don't have it with me right here.
No,
But it just has a viewing screen on it, and you can. It has a receiver and a viewing screen and a battery,
okay.
and you just as the car runs around, you can view it on the screen. There's probably a way of recording it also, but I haven't gotten into that yet.
There may be an SD card on the side of that camera box that the ones I had, that's where your high resolution video was, and what it transmitted was a lower resolution.
Yeah, that's one of the things that it'd be interesting if anyone has any experience in is, working with drone cameras and drone transmitters and receivers. You kind of understand it. You can kind of go look at them, but it'd be great because look at trying to get that stuff down and put it in locomotives. I think there's a whole opportunity to change things. I was in this thought of an operating session where all the engineers are sitting in a separate room with a screen and the conductor is the only person in at the layout and they're talking by radio. So as the engineer, you're watching everything by video. So it'd be really interesting to see if you could put a video camera both in the engine and the caboose and have the ability to switch back and forth.
Yeah.
And they'll be so surprised.
Processes.
They'll be so surprised when they come around the corner and there's another train there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Well, it makes everything much more realistic when you can't see around the corner because you're 250 feet high.
Yeah.
Okay, David, we're all set. So you're
Okay,
ready to share.
Let's try this again. Okay, so share screen. Desktop, share.
There you go.
Okay, so you guys see Gibbons layout test bed?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Long time out of the hobby, getting back in. And so we've moved in, my lady and I have moved in with her dad, and I got permission to put something along one wall of the garage. So here you see 30-inch by 16-foot, two basically modules, because I did modular railroading for so long I couldn't stop myself from building them that way. Leg assemblies are just braced, as you can see, with cut pieces of plywood bolted to the frame of the two sections. At this point, you can see the control point 135 there in the middle. I'll show you more detail. Track is laid, and I'm building out from there. But of course, a hobby shop, which shall remain nameless, I paid them for code 83. They shipped me code 100. Now I'm waiting for code 83 so I can finish the main line and start laying track back into the industrial area. Legs have T-nuts in the bottom, bolts, because of course it's a garage floor slope, so I could level the thing. And it is freestanding. You'll notice the wall behind looks terrible. There's no backdrop. There at first won't be a backdrop, but what I'm going to do is paint the wall a sky blue. I've got a set of blinds I got in yesterday that I'll spray paint a matching color, so I have at least a rough sky appearance. We're going to put in a little low silhouette of a town behind to hide the electrical outlets. You can see to left of the big battery powered drill to hide the electrical service that's there and to hide the windowsill. So that's how we're going to sort of provide some kind of scenery backdrop. Later on, we may hang some hardboard and paint something fancier on there, but that'll be phase one. So that is, any questions on this slide? Okay. Here is the interlocking, and you're sitting there going, why has this idiot got a full interlocking on a 16-foot long switching layout? And that's because in the future, when our duty here of taking care of the elderly person is done, we will move away and I'm going to get myself a train room, by God. And so this is a chance for me to test CMI hardware, JMRI software, signaling the whole 9 yards on a full detected interlocking. So that is that's why this is here. These two main lines are staging tracks, because what will happen is I'll have a train on each main, which is going to come in, set out some cars in the industrial area, pick up some cars, and then go away, and then using as a fiddle yard, turn the train by hand, put it on the northbound main line, and do the same thing over and over. That'll be how I'm going to do staging and get some use out of those tracks. The turnouts you see here were code 83 using the fast tracks system. I've many years ago been shown how to hand lay straight up, but am enjoying the fast tracks. It takes some of the, how shall I, pressure off. It sort of automates some of the things of shaping points and frogs. Because I'm comfortable with soldering, I had no problem with any of that part of it. By the way, I'm supposedly still on tap to do a clinic on soldering, Phil. Is that right?
Yeah, when you're, why don't you send me an email and we'll just figure out a time. Pick a
Okay,
date.
I did throw you one, but maybe it got in the spam
Yeah,
filtered.
let me check and see. Cool.
Okie doke. All right. Now, by the way, you may have noticed, look underneath the ties and what do you see?
Ballast.
Ballast. This thing is pre-ballasted. I got in the habit of doing this back with the modules because a lot of the modular club members would make ballast piles that would be near to ½ an inch thick because they just threw the cork down and then just piled ballast on deep to get the profile. And it would fail. It would they would try to glue it. It was so thick the glue would glue a thin skin of ballast over the rest of the ballast pile, which was dry and loose. Then you'd be handling the modules, moving them around, and it would break up, and you would end up with just holes and gaps and pockets in the so-called ballast pile. So this stuff is done in multiple phases. 1, paint the table. 2, draw the lines. 3, put down the cork. I experimented and used hot glue. It was adequate, not great. Then I painted then I sanded the cork like hell to get the round shape to break those hard corners. Then I painted the heck out of it and sealed it. Then I took spackle and got the skirts off of the, where the ballast comes down to the ground, and it's usually nice to smooth slope, and in between the two main lines there's a nice swale. That was all shaped with spackle, sanded again, painted again, let that dry, and then short section by short section, paint real wet, sprinkle Woodland Scenic's fine ballast, move down a few more inches, paint it wet, sprinkle all the way down, go away, don't mess with it, let it dry, brush off the excess, and here you see pre-ballasted track. The idea being that when I go to ballast, the second coat of ballast, which will put the ballast between the ties, can you see my pointer moving?
Yes.
Okay, from about here to here, taped all to heck, taped all along this edge and taped along that edge, where where I'm taping over the area where the points move, completely sealed hermetically as best I can. So then I can ballast around the turnout, and then ballast and glue does not foul those points. That was an ongoing problem with our clubs, and I presume you guys have fought it too. But since it's pre-ballasted, if you look at the turnout, it isn't obvious that you don't see bare cork or anything under there. It's got ballast under there, but to me, making sure the points are moving freely is more important. This particular turnout uses the tie sets called quick sticks from Fast Tracks. I followed somebody's advice and heaved the quick stick thing into some Minwax dark walnut stain to darken it so that it would kind of match the Atlas Code 83 Flex that you see here. Here you see a couple of the individual ties from Fast Tracks also stain the same. I will have to, of course, hand paint all the ties that are copper, and I'm probably going to hand paint everything dry brush to blend the Atlas and the Fast Tracks ties all together. And then I'm going to try the little paint thingies from Woodland Scenics for doing the side of the rails with rust. So that's how I hope to make it look a little more prototypical than you see here. The drops to power the frog can be seen here, here, and on the other side. Just the usual, bring it up, bend it, tuck it in, and solder it. And then here you can see a couple of marks of where a gap is. And this is something where I'd like some feedback. Do you guys, who tucks plastic or fills those gaps with plastic, and who just leaves them open? Any thoughts?
I use a plastic about 10 thousandths, 15 thousandths in my gaps.
I cut all my gaps between PC ties. And so if it's done right, you generally don't have, I mean, if you look at where your PC ties are at the gap there, you really don't have to worry about movement then.
Right, agreed.
And so like where you've got those other gaps, I would have used either some PC ties or a gap master at that point.
Gap master?
So Gap Masters, one of the guys here in the Valley, he's part of our CCC club, makes them. They sell them at, starts with a C.
Clover House?
Clover House. Yeah, Clover House sells them. Basically, it's a pre-cut PC tie that looks like, or PC board that's got, looks like two ties, but has gaps cut in it so you can gap the rail, and it's actually made to look like different kinds of rail. So you can buy them, to look like micro-engineering ties for a specific scale.
Got it.
And they're designed to, you put them on the track, put them down. One of the things we do is we use them on the ends of the modules, and you put them on the tracks on the end of the modules and solder them to that. That way you don't get the tracks pulling up at the ends of the modules.
Got it. All right.
What's the advantage of making your own turnouts as opposed to purchasing them?
Sir, have you priced turnouts retail these days?
Oh, is that it? Mostly a price issue?
It's a price issue,
yeah.
and frankly, it's also I'm finding it quite satisfying.
Okay.
To roll my own. Because now to buy the fast track system is not cheap. If you only had to do 4 or 5 turnouts, it would be a financial disaster. But I'm looking towards a permanent layout in the future where I'll be building hundreds of turnouts, and I'll come out ahead in the long run. Plus, there is the fun of modeling and building them.
Fair enough.
And the Fremo N group has been using the fast tracks things too. And the things that we're finding with that is that their geometry is quite superior to a lot of the commercial project too. So that's another reason for going with fast tracks. I was also wondering, what about trying to chemically blacken the tops of the PC ties?
Could be done. It's just chemicals can react to perhaps cause shorts or stuff. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I think I'm just going to break out my paintbrush and sit there and dab away.
You said that was the last time.
Hey, Dave, at some point it'd be great if you could do a session on using fast tracks. So I bought the whole setup, and I've made a couple of fast tracks, and they aren't too terribly good. So watching you do it might really help me anyway.
Okay, if you don't mind a few obscenities during the presentation.
Oh, it comes with the course.
Back to the question of commercial turnouts. It was really interesting. At the last convention in Salt Lake, I went to I believe it was a clinic. I think there was a clinic on getting turnouts to work well. And the guy who did the clinic basically said, you need to spend time on all the commercial turnouts, basically tuning up to get them to work right. But the other thing he said that I had never thought about is plastic molding over time degrades and the tolerances begin to fall apart. And depending upon when in the life cycle of the tooling your turnout was made, it may or may not meet specifications. So there's a kind of his argument. It wasn't an argument for doing fast tracks, but basically what he was saying is if you buy a turnout off the shelf, from the hobby shop, put it down, put a couple of rails to it, and expect it to work without going through it with a gauge and tuning it up, you're probably not going to get the performance you want. So when you kind of put those two together, it kind of obviates a lot of the labor content of doing the fast tracks if you have to spend an hour tuning up all the commercial ones because they really don't work that well. So
Very good.
Now, none of you dinged me on something I did here. Those are the little microscale spikes, which are not going down into the plywood. They're just going down into the cork. I am gambling, gentlemen. I am hoping that when I ballast this with the second coat of ballast, that will bond the ties and everything to the base ballast coat and the road bed, and I won't have to worry about things lifting off. I'll find out over time.
Probably will. What are you using for an adhesive on the final ballast layer?
Probably what I'm used to, which is white glue mixed with water. I think I was running years past, I think I used like 50-50 and a couple of drops of alcohol or dish soap to wet it and do it that way. That's what I'm intending to try.
Okay.
It worked for me in the past. You'll notice over here, I do not have the setup to support the model of a switch machine that's here, but I'm just sort of leaving that as a scenic thing rather than anything else. Okay, so we talked about pre-ballasting, and like everybody else, I curse and cry as you sit there working upside down trying to secure the tortoise switch machines. The learning experience, that is screw up, was this guy here, where I put it in and the wire, the activating wire, is on the other side, very close to that board. So when I needed to bend the wire, I couldn't get at it, had to take the turnout off, bend the wire, put it back in, wasn't right, take it out, bend the wire, put it back in. If I had just installed it facing the other way. So hindsight. I am waiting for a company. I sourced some push-on connectors that push onto this section here. I don't want to solder onto these guys. I want to solder onto the connector and push it on there. So the three wires here are point, stock rail, and these two wires are the power to operate the tortoise. So the drops are all here as usual. I'm just waiting for parts. I don't know how many people use push-on connectors on their tortoises, but I just thought if I have to redo something or tear this layout apart, I don't have soldered up terminals on the tortoise.
Push-on connectors work great.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I thought it was worth a couple of $3.
David, on that on that last screen shot you had there, what is the blue that's above the tortoise? Is that tape?
I took the tortoise template, made a bunch of copies of it, and then taped the template to go where it needed to go. That is, I had drilled the hole for the wire that goes up through the board and the road bed to get to the turnout. Then I just took the template, centered it properly, taped it up, and then that allowed me to drill the 4 pilot holes for the 4 little screws to hold it in place. I miss working on true modules where you can turn the module over or lean it sideways to work, but I'm not in a position where I could turn this thing sideways to get at it. So like many of you, working upside down, hate it. I'm going to get a little step I can sit on to make it easier, because I don't know about you guys, I'm a lot stiffer than I was 20 years ago. But not in the good way we wish for when we're this old. and yeah, I knew that was going to get a laugh. But you know, it's part of the hobby. And so now some people, does anybody use double-sided tape to hold their tortoises on, or is pretty much everybody still fastening them with a screw?
I used double-sided tape to originally put the tortoise up there, and when I've got it all fine adjusted, then I put the screws in. I use an ice pick through the slots to kind of, or you could use a drill and then screw it in once I'm satisfied with the setup of the tortoise. But I don't think I would rely on the double stick tape holding for a long time.
Got it. All right.
David, a couple places I couldn't get into with a drill after building the railroad, which is not the issue you have here, but I use Velcro on a couple of these things.
Really?
And I really thought for sure it was not going to last, but it lasted until I tore it down. It lasted 16 years without an issue.
That
So,
seems like cheating.
yeah, but I mean, when I had to adjust it, I could just pull it off and move it over a little bit. It was amazing. I don't know why I don't do it on more. So,
Okay, Velcro. Thank you. There's
So
a
the other,
now that I've
what we did in
sorry.
Pleasanton, we mounted all of the tortoises to like a square 1/2-inch plywood plate with holes in that. And that's actually what mounts the layout. And it's a lot easier to screw those in under the layout than to get the little, and I was doing those little screws on the tortoise into a piece of wood on the workbench, and then using just big drywall screws, 1.25-inch drywall screws to run that up into the layout's a lot easier. Plus, it's a lot easier replacement because you just standardize those plates underneath.
All right.
And the other thing is when you get done sharing, I'll show you, we use Cat5 connectors on top, an RJ45 connector on top of the tortoise with a Cat5 cable. So it's really easy to disconnect it and reconnect it.
Okay. Oh, in the sense you took a female socket, wired it into the circuit board, and then you just would plug into that socket?
Right. It's glued on the top. It's actually glued to the top of the tortoise and just wired directly into the tortoise lead. So you got the 8 wires of the tortoise directly to a Cat5. You just buy a 3-foot Cat5, cut it in half, strip it, and use that to wire to all your terminations. Now you've got a click-on connector to your tortoise.
Oh, so you mean where I'm circling here, you would glue the thing here.
I'll show you a picture in a second.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll appreciate it.
Yep, no worries.
All right. Okay, this is phase 1, which is, remember, I'm going to do a full interlocking with, God help me, CMRI boards and JMRI driving to control the interlocking and signaling at control point 135. Phase 1, though, is just going to be simple double pole, double throw switches to operate the turnouts, which in later phases, then I'll add all the fancy electronics and signaling. So that's why it looks so crude, because right now I just want to get something going. Last share, I'm going to change gears just for a little bit. I think a fair amount of you use DCC, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if any of the rest of you are having trouble, but here you see a NCE D13J decoder. This is an NCE decoder tester, an NCE booster, the command station, and a ProCab. And the NCE decoders all work if I don't do anything to the speed tables, but I'm having a terrible time trying to get them to behave properly if I tell it to change CV 5 and 6 to values other than the basic 0 or 255 defaults. Is anybody else running into that kind of problem? Nope. Okay. Yeah, I have things like over here, let's see, 4350B over here, for example. I tried to set it for speed, the CV5 to 100 and CV6 to 70. This would be for a little switcher, industrial switcher engine, where I wanted to have it move very slowly at top speed. And the speed response, the output to the motor, you can see it here in my scope. This is actually one of the pulses of power going to the motor, in this case driving this Athearn down here. It would go up, it would increase in speed up to about speed step 19 to 28, then it would collapse back to a very low value, and then it would climb again to about speed step 21 and collapse. And I finally, after a lot of backing and forthing, have shipped 7 of the things to NCE in various states where they're not working correctly to see if NCE will let me know what I'm doing wrong or what's wrong with the decoders. But this is, I've done a lot of testing. I'm an electronics technician, retired now, and so you might guess from this setup. But boy, it's just been puzzling the heck out of me, and I really want to get it figured out. So that's my technical challenge, aside from things like laying turnouts and doing drops. Thank you very much for your patience as I waved my arms at you about where I'm at in my project, and I'll take any questions that anybody might have.
Cool. So here, let me, I'll show you real quick. This is actually, there's a clinic we did back in the very early days of getting together. And these were a couple of slides. So this was, found these connectors which have punch down pins. Basically, they were glued with a touch of, oh, so
They were glued with.
oh, I keep getting messages that Zoom is telling me it's quitting. Anyway, that.
I did.
And Zoom has just killed Phil.
Yeah, that was weird. That was the weirdest thing. I don't know if it was because I was sharing and it didn't like it or what. Anyway, hang on. Let me go back here to where I was.
Oh, shucks. I thought we got rid of Phil.
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
I was so excited, you know.
So essentially what you do here is you punch these in and then you just solder them in and they're just directly pinned across. But then what we did is you now can take a tortoise and you just run a piece of Cat 5 and run it over. These are DCC from DCC Specialties. They're, what they call it, it's a rabbit, but it's actually the one that's got 2 on it. But essentially now you can just unplug and plug into the turnout. So this is like 2 turnout motors on a single DCC control, but changing them now becomes really easy. So that's actually up on the YouTube channel, I think. It was one of the things we did early on.
Neat.
Yeah, and in fact, Seth did a whole session on kind of structured wiring as well, which is, yeah, the only other thing when I did the modules, I did all, if you notice on that picture, the module is upside down because I basically did the module, put all the track down, then flipped it over on towels on a workbench, did all the electrical with it upside down where you were doing it on the bottom, got it completely done, and then turned it up and started working on the scenery.
That takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah, I was looking at your thing. I was just thinking it would have been really cool if you just hinged the whole thing so I could hinge up and you could work on the underside and hinge it down and run trains. Kind of a hinged layout. So yeah, working on the underside is no fun whatsoever. Especially when people built scenery. You work in a club and you find that place that you can only get into if you lay on your side and squeeze between the bench work and reach out to try to get to that point to put something in.
Now, since we're talking about it, I'm getting ready to go to the next level. And I've been looking at the tortoise mounts and all of this. Has anybody mounted all their tortoises towards the front and linked them in? Does anybody have a good mountable link under the hole so you can like extend it with a like an airplane guide?
You know,
I got some.
They have those they have the little pin things that you have a pin in the center and they swing that you use to control the ailerons and that. If you just mounted one of those where the turnout is, and with some, and then maybe something to go up through to pin to the turnout, you could run one of those control wires up to the front and put the tortoise wherever you wanted. You know, one of those tubes with where the wire runs through. So you have a wire from the tortoise that would run through a tube and would turn one of those little brackets, and that would run the pin up. Should be pretty easy to put together. They have a lot of those parts for the airplane guys.
I'll bring a bunch of them over to your place this afternoon, Jim.
Okay, I know I've done it where you did it where it ran on top and you mounted the tortoise where it couldn't be seen, but I've never done it underneath. And I just thought it would be so much easier to sit on a comfy chair and do the wiring from the aisle than laying on the ground.
Jim, you might use those Blue Point control systems. They're push-pull. I have them in one of my staging yards, and you could just put those under the layout and then bring them out to the fascia and put your tortoise machines there. But still, you have to get under the points to mount that what do you call it?
The actuator wire.
The actuator wire. I don't know if it saves you any.
I think it's time to teach my monkey that I'll pay him $1 a switch or something.
But you know, if I was doing it on my home layout, I think what I would do is I like the Cat 5 plugs. I think I would build every turnout as a module that had, from the tortoise you ran down to something that you could connect to the frog. So you'd have the input for the DC, and you'd have the output to the frog as kind of terminal connectors on the side of a little module. And then you'd have a Cat5 plug that would run to the panel. And if you did that right, literally from wherever your control point was out to the switch would just be a Cat5. Right? The interesting question is whether you're going to have local control or remote control, because if it's a CTC control, then, you know, when you put it under the layout, the only thing you have to do under the layout is connect the 3 wires to the frog and plug in a Cat5. Everything else is pre-wired. I mean, it's an interesting thought. One of the thought processes, what we're trying to do through Pleasant is I looked at it and said, how do you do things with the absolute minimum amount of work under the layout, where everything can be pre-built on the workbench as much as possible and just installed in the layout and plugged together? So you screw it in, plug a plug in, and you're done. So like the signals, what we're going to have, what the custom signals actually have RJ14s for each signal head, which is the telco connectors, the 6 or 4 wire telco connectors. And so we're going to have a little module and have 2 of those connectors on it, 1 Cat5, and you just basically put that under the layout, screw it in somewhere, or clip it on with double-sided tape. The signal gets mounted, and those come down through from the top, gets mounted from the top. You plug those 2 in and the Cat5 in, and you walk out front of the layout, and you're done. There's not a single wire to solder or a screw to terminate. It's all plug and play. So yeah, I think, you know, it's the cost structure of these connectors. That was what Seth was getting to. Makes it really easy to rethink wiring in a very different way. You know, because when you get a big distributed layout, it's great. And the idea of centralization means that troubleshooting becomes easy because there's nothing, you know, if you've got a cable running from you to the turnout and there's nothing in between, there are no connections, it's pretty easy to figure out where the failures are. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
One other tip about Tortoise switch machines. I talked to the people at Circuitron, but you want your fulcrum up near the top of the Tortoise machine because they're shorting switches or wipers in the Tortoise machine. And if your fulcrum is down real low, you might have some shorting when you throw the switch. So I always make my turnout, it takes 2 people to mount a Tortoise. As I put it in under the layout, I have a guy on top and I'm using the double stick tape and we throw the switch back and forth. And if the wire isn't bent right, pull it down and rebend it. But you want that fulcrum up as near to the top of the Tortoise machine as you possibly can get it.
Did anybody try that Gorilla Glue? And not Gorilla Glue, Gorilla Tape or whatever it is? That's supposed to keep lead weights attached to the wall? No?
Yeah.
Being advertised.
I'm just taking with the Velcro idea.
It worked really well. I mean, it was strange, and then I put a couple screws in it eventually. But I've got some pictures I'd love to share to give you guys a little humor, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay, this is wait, I guess you can see it. I can't. This is just what the room looked like a little while ago. And, you know, sometimes you get on yourself about not producing a lot of stuff. And how do I move the toolbar at the top, Phil? Okay, I'll just change.
Hang on. So we're actually seeing your
desktop.
We are seeing your desktop. Yeah. So we're seeing your Finder there, your Google Drive. Yep.
Yeah, I know. How do this thing right here that says stop share? How do I move that? Because it's blocking my.
Oh, up at the very top. I don't know. There you go.
Okay. Well, anyway, you know, so this is what it looks like now. You know, so I am making progress.
Wow.
Things you need to look at here is that.
I can show you. What are you trying to get rid of?
No, I got. The wife wants to get in here and help. Okay. Get out of here. She didn't bring food, damn it. Anyway, so this is what it looks like now, but I want you to focus right up here on this beam. Okay, you can see there's a little cutout in it because this is the humor hour. And also the helix. You know, the gentleman who was doing the Russian modeling was saying he thought about it and he planned it for hours and hours. Well, I have a different strategy. I get out there and throw it together, then try and sit there and think about it for hours and hours of why it doesn't look right the way that I thought it was going to look like. I've got a laser level, and this is the old part of the railroad. This is the yard that I wanted to keep. So eventually this will connect to that, but it has a long run. It has quite a long run to get there. And my thought was I was going to have a slight hill coming up, and then it was going to level out and it was going to be there. And once I put the helix in and got it leveled, you know, I looked at it and I just knew something wasn't right. Okay, so I had the level out, and there was only a difference of about 3 inches. Now, if I put the bench work up over the helix on this side, the 3 inches won't obviously have clearance, you know, so I knew something was wrong. And so I started contemplating that. Okay, so this whole thing is about, you know, something's wrong, but you don't know what it is. So I sat there and I worked at it, and I realized that I put on one level of helix a bit too much. So I put the helix on a diet and took a one level off, and it'll work out just the way I planned it. This is where I connected my 2 staging areas together. I was looking for the previous picture. If you see that right now, they look like they're both pretty much on about the same, you know, radius and everything else. And that's because I smoothed it out. The original on the lower level came out here and it bent around and it came back in, and it created a huge S curve here. Now I tried it out. It didn't seem to be a problem until these 89-foot flat cars with pipes on them got on it. And 2 of them together, it just wouldn't handle it. So it kept kicking it off. And so I sat there and looked at it and I said, I knew this was a mistake I needed to fix. And it's kind of like, you know, all these little things that you see need to fix. So I went back in and learned how to work within 6 inches of space and pull the switch off and relayed it and got it back in there. So it's a nice gentle curve now. So problem solved. Remember, I told you to look at the cutout of the beam. This is the beam right here. And this is my upper staging. It's up by the ceiling, built it all on the lower level and shoved it up there. I had the wife and a teenage son helping, which also, you know, kind of also peaks everything, because they're always like, when are we going to get done? What do I do next? What do I do next? When you're trying to figure it out yourself. And so here's what happened. This is why we have the cut in the beam. We got up there and realized it was a little too close. So we cut that out and we shoved it up too high. Okay. And so you realize that even a good diesel engine can't get under that. Mm-hmm. So as somebody said, hey, look, it's up high. It's really easy to make it come lower. So I did. I went and lowered it down, and now there's quite a clearance up there. But, you know, just a good time to laugh a little bit about, hey, we build, we plan. And it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. But you can come up with solutions. You know, it's all a hobby where you sit here, you make a mistake, you know, and then you recover, you know, and it's like, you know, you just keep going and it's like you figure it out. So, but, you know, having fun in the garage. And I think that's the main part, right? So.
Oh.
Just so that beam isn't the structural beam across your garage ceiling, right?
Yes, it holds up the new room. So, and where it connects, where it's supported is at the beginning of that chop there, but there is another part of the beam that goes across. So.
It doesn't mind getting a piece cut out of it?
No, because it was hanging over the edge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you looked at it, it was on the back side where it was stubbed out.
It was a dead part of the beam.
Right. The main support part was the left. The support came up just the left of the cut, and the main support depth of the beam was farther left. I looked at that and I was kind of like making sure don't want to dance upstairs anymore.
Oh, nobody's dancing on the roof anymore. That roof is so old. I don't know. It's got stains on it. And oh boy, you know, the roofers went up there and re-roofed it like 20 years ago. And I thought for sure one of them was going to fall through. It's a 1910 carriage house. So the new part is quite strong. We were up there dancing on that roof, but not the old one. So.
Well,
Quick question.
I've got one thing that I'm sort of puzzling through right now. Unlike Earl, I have only an 11x3 with a little bit of extension area to model in. So I don't have to worry about filling rooms and playing with the beams or anything like that. But in building the bench work, I originally made it so I was going to be able to pull it out, but it turned out that it's pretty permanent. And now I'm trying to lay some track at the back. And somewhere in the distant past, I had purchased a 4x8 sheet of 1/4-inch polystyrene from Zap Plastic. And I've cut it had it cut originally into 2x4 sheets. And now I'm cutting it up into panels on which I'm going to lay the track on my workbench, essentially, and then put it on top of the layout. And has anybody tried an approach like that? Nope. Okay. Well, I always experiment.
If you're going to lay it on the top, Ken, is it possible that you could hinge it the way Phil was suggesting earlier?
I'm sorry?
Is it
I'm pretty deaf, so.
Is there any way that you could hinge these acrylic panels so that you could get to the bottoms of them after?
Oh, that's not going to be a problem so much as the bench work is pretty open underneath.
Okay.
So it's just another layer of a road bed essentially, but it's going to be plastic rather than.
So is that going to go directly on the plywood then?
No, I don't use plywood to start with. I've got a sort of a sandwich of foam board and things like that. And on top of it is a wooden scenic sheet foam, and this will go on top of that. Now this is for the main line at the back of the layout, which is more just a scenic feature than it is an operating main line. So it's really going to, it's just a matter of not wanting to have to lean over a 30-inch layout to lay track. I want to put it on a panel, and then on a large panel, like it's going to be 6-inch by 48 inches panels of track, and then just plop that onto the layout, ballasted and everything.
So I was actually thinking about that, and it's an interesting thought because I've on the modules been doing foam, and then I've been using the Homa bed, which you can't get anymore. So, but we also use cork. The interesting thought to say, what if you cut 1/4-inch acrylic out to follow the path of the tracks? Because now you have a much more solid road bed on top of the foam. The only thing I was thinking about is the noise. It probably will transmit because you'll directly couple any noise from the track rollers into that piece of plexiglass, and it'll vibrate. It may actually operate a little bit like a speaker. It might be interesting to take a piece, put a pin in to see.
Well, it's got foam underlay and underneath the plastic sheet.
Yeah, but it's more that, as the engine vibrates the rails, that couples to the plastic tracks, that couples to the acrylic, and the acrylic vibrates, which makes it kind of like a speaker.
This is where being partially deaf will come in handy.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. That's right. Exactly.
I was going to say, you forgot
totally
the first
ignorable
part of the conversation.
Never mind.
If the plastic is bonded to the foam underneath, that's going to tend to act as a
No,
damp
it's
to the
not going to be
plastic.
bonded. It's
Oh,
not
you're
going
going
to
to
be
have it be
bonded.
loose. Okay.
It's just so I can put these, if I want to remove a piece and do something to it, we have to do like slide just a couple of rail joiners off from adjacent pieces and then pull it out, the whole thing out and take it back to the workbench.
Interesting. How are you going to attach the plastic to the bench work or whatever you're putting the railroad on?
Oh, I haven't thought about that much. I might just try some screws.
Or maybe even just a pin, you know? Maybe just a pin.
Yeah, just a pin. I
want it to move
you know, I
left
could
and
use
right, or-
track nails to attach it.
20 penny nails.
Oh, come on.
Uh,
Yeah, but it as I'm experimenting with this because I've got some pieces of it and I'm starting to work on it on my kitchen table, which is the extension of the workbench for large objects. And I'm not married, guys, so I have, you know, I can do whatever I want. Anyway, it's just something I'm working out, and I was wondering if I should use a light sealer type stuff to lay the track down even. I've tested white glue actually, or canopy glue as an adhesive to hold the track to the plastic. I'm just playing around with this stuff to get the whole object is that I don't want to have to try and lay the track on the layout. I want to lay it on a in an area that I can easily work, and then bring it and plunk it down on the layout.
And
shoot.
Is it functional track? Is it powered?
Yeah, it's going to be powered. I'm not into dead rail yet.
Well, what about the rigidity? Depending on how often you have to take it out, the rigidity of that polystyrene with track glued onto it. See any issue?
I haven't thought about it much now. I'll take that into consideration. Actually, it's going to be large areas that are wired together. I've been using DCC, but for the mainline trackage, I may actually be using the Wi-Fi control layout. So it's just power going to the layout, pure power. It's not a matter of control going through the rails or being wired to the rails. If I could, I'd actually battery power the stuff so it would just go dead rail and forget about wiring.
Yeah, Ken, you said you were not using plywood for your bench work. So what does your bench work look like? Foam?
It's very interesting. It's 1/2 inch. What's it? God, what am I going to call it? Elmer's makes it. It's
chipboard.
Yeah, huh?
Chipboard.
It's let me see if I can show you. Here's a section of it right now. If I can get this to.
With the background on where you can't see anything.
Yeah, I was going to say that track work looked impressive.
Yeah, well, there's a long story behind that track work. Oh, this is the problem. I've got the I can't do it right now because of the way I've got the Zoom session set up with a background, and I have to turn the background off, which means I have to get out of this and everything else. Let's see here.
It's okay next time, because I'm getting curious now. Using plastic as a road bed, and now what are you going to put it on top of? You know, it's like,
Oh, here, come on. How do I get out of this? Turn it off. I just want to turn it off. None. There we go. Okay. Now let's get out of that. Get back to this. Okay. All right. What you see here is a section of this material, the sheet material. And I know foam board, it's foam board. It's like a, yeah, it's just craft foam board.
yeah.
What's it on top of?
On top of this case, it's just a piece of a flat piece of lumber. And it has enough support to it that I can go between the, you know, I can lay an area like this and it's fully supported and there's no
So
problem.
that's just, yeah, that's just a foam poster board.
Foam core.
Yeah,
It's foam core. That's what it is. Yeah. And I built the whole layout that way using L girders here. And then a layer of foam core, and it's actually got some trim pieces in front of it here. But it's basically, this is foam core under here. And then on top of the foam core, because I was concerned with fluids like ballasting and everything else and scenic work going through, I put a very thin sheet of, clear plastic that I bought a huge sheet of it and it covers the whole layout. And but anyway, you see in the back area, I've started the white panels are the start of the this track laying modular area. And the fact that it's the main line, it's higher than the yard trackage in the front. Anyway.
All right, that's like, yeah. Now I have a better understanding. Interesting. I like the idea of trying to keep it sealed so the stuff wouldn't run through.
Yeah. Well, the thing is the original idea was that this was going to be so lightweight that when I pot off, my kids can move it out of here, or my kid can get it moved out of here without too much trouble.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's this is the area that, by the way, that we spend a lot of time with, right in here, where I'm modeling. This is Port Costa in 1950, 51, and I spend most of my time actually just modeling buildings.
Rule number one, you're having fun.
Huh?
Rule number one, if you're having fun, what does it matter?
Well, actually, the track is powered for the most part, and I can move locomotives around, but I'm more of a model builder anyway. So it's not my operation is not my interest. I've worked for a railroad. I don't care.
Yeah, can I put in a plug for a business that I just found and bought some plywood from? If anybody's looking for sheet plywood, there's a company in San Leandro called Moore and Newton. I think I live in the East Bay, and there used to be a company called Plywood Sales that did a pretty good job, but that was almost 15 years ago, and they're long gone. You know, I was looking at stuff at Home Depot and thinking, oh goodness, where am I going to get something better? Truett and White had some, but these guys, Moore and Newton and San Leandro, beat their price by $10 a sheet, and they delivered free. So strongly suggest Moore and Newton if you need some plywood stuff. Look them up.
Do you know if they carry the good Baltic birch plywood?
I just bought some. I bought 14 sheets of 9-ply 1/2-inch Baltic birch. It is wonderful. It is great.
What was their price on those?
It was $60 a sheet. So
And those are, what dimension was that again? Is that
4x8.
4x8?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They had different sizes too, but and they've got anything, you know, they told me to stop by and, you know, if you're any kind of a woodworker, get excited by any kind of lumber. He said, you'll love this place. So, but
that's actually a really interesting, brings up an interesting thought. I know, should we consider on the Coast Division webpage, having a page devoted to local modeling resources? So like, I mean, where, you know, for like, where do you get foam? Where do you get plywood? Where do you get this? Where do you get that? Other than Home Depot, it's a great tip and we'll all remember it today, but it will be lost to posterity after this meeting ends. I was just thinking maybe if we had a place to put that up, we could actually, you know, have a way you could submit something, send an email saying, here I found this here. And we just put them up and say, you know, wood components, glues, think about some different categories. Might be an interesting.
Yeah, I think it would be great because I've taken down a couple of notes, like earlier today, you know, the glue that conducts electricity, and then I inevitably lose that piece of paper, and it's like, oh, what was that? And so if we had a place to capture some of that stuff, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides. There's kind of the tips, but I'm really thinking very specifically about coast regional area places to buy stuff and resources for stuff. You know, I
agree with that
surplus
too.
Supply for electronics and that, because, you know, it kind of half this stuff's word of mouth between us. Like I bought foam. There's a place in San Leandro where you can buy foam. They do foam insulation and stuff, big warehouse, and you get all the different kinds, the 150, the 250, the 350. So if you want the more rigid foam for something, you can buy it there. Yeah, so having those in a list would be great.
Yep.
Somebody's got a replacement for fries.
Yeah. I think if you did that,
I do.
If you kind of organize it by the categories that NMRA uses, like, you know, bench work stuff, track work stuff, electrical stuff, and
that's a good idea. That's a great idea.
That's a good organization. Yeah.
Yep.
Somebody needs to come up with a fix for Al Lesher. So Al Lesher Electronics, you know, it's like, where's the dumping ground now? Yeah.
Yeah, we lost the one up in Sonoma County that our clubs used for many years because I don't know about you gentlemen, but it seems to me that so many of the young persons, their hobbies are so much different than ours. They're not building models. They're putzing around with computers and computer games and so on, and making things which requires supplies is not in style anymore. At least that's the way it seems at this end.
So before
we're working on a vaccine for that, but you know,
well, but, you know, so we need to be really careful here because so I would argue that a lot of what we do is creating things in our imagination and realizing them in physical instantiations. And I think the real difference is for us, that's how we think, because when we were raised, we lived in a real physical world. I think a lot of the young people are doing the same thing, but the instantiation is in a computer. So if you're in one of these games creating your empire to battle with the next guy's empire, I'm not sure the brain thought processes and those younger people are any different than ours. It's just we instantiate in what we learned when we were younger, which is a physical world. So when we see our visions, we see them in a physical world. When they see their visions, they're able to see them in a virtual world and feel comfortable with that. I mean, it's a really interesting thought process. We kind of bemoan the fact they're not doing physical things, but then everything else they're doing is basically the same. Imagining something, coming up with the tools to create it, creating something that's different that no one else can create. It's just they're doing it in a virtual world where we've always done it in the physical world.
It's Minecraft. The things that my kids build with Minecraft are amazing.
Yeah,
I don't understand. By the way, just a piece that I do not understand it whatsoever.
But there are a large number of people who are into like military models or fantasy models and things like that, or 3D physical pieces. And I mean, they're full everywhere. And getting to use some of their product, and like Vallejo paints, which are made for that community.
Well, I think Phil made a good point though. That's an interesting perspective on it. And I think maybe sort of the borderline for that might be the 3D printing stuff that we're doing now.
Yeah.
It used to be you build stuff up out of little pieces of stuff, but now you do it all on a computer and you just print it out. So you're doing the work mentally more than physically.
And it is an awful lot of mental thought process. I mean, stopping and thinking how to build. I've shown you some of those decks and things. I mean, there's different ways to do this in 3D, not in the 3D printing, but in the generation of the image structure.
Yeah.
Fran's very familiar with knowing the difference of when to deposit material versus when to extract material, when to draw something one way and pad it out, or draw it as a little piece this way and pad it the long way. And you kind of have to look at a part and think through the structural steps to do it, which interestingly enough is no different than in the real world, right? If you think about taking a piece of wood and how you plane it down to get a square and how you cut it and it's exactly the same thing. It's just a different set of tools. They're implemented in different ways. But the thought process is, I mean, people that can do one thing have the same thought process do the other way. They just instantiate them differently.
Mm-hmm.
We just got to go figure out how to get some of those kids to realize that it's not real when it's on a computer. It's real when it's a layout.
Yeah.
I just know that when I tried to instantiate some of my ideas in the real world, I got 30 days jail time.
Hey, I got a quick question for David. I noticed on your switch machines, you had this color stripe coated wiring. Is that an old salvage, or is that available anywhere?
Sadly, that came from HSC Electronics in Santa Rosa, which was a surplus place, and I just bought spool after spool after spool of wire. We used it in our club layouts and modules, and I ended up with them. So that's old stock.
I salvaged about a 28 conductor cable once that was that color coded stripe, and to get 28 different color stripes within one cable was pretty cool. I still have some of it. I'm still using.
Old Cat 5, Cat 6 cable that people are throwing away, of course, can also be salvaged for the wires inside it.
Yeah, what I had was when HP was into medical, the signal cable, and it was probably maybe 18 gauge, 16 or 18. So
Back in the 70s, I was building a layout and wiring it with stuff that I'd got from a friend, a surplus Pac Bell phone wire. It was easily available for everybody.
And it was everywhere and cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The lack of domestic telephony has kind of taken out those 28 gauge twisted pair or 26 gauge twisted pair of wires we used to use all the time.
Yeah.
It's they were
Isn't it
pretty
funny?
ubiquitous.
Yeah. Domestic telephony is gone. Remember the B-box? Oh, no.
Our club used surplus 25 pair push-on connector blocks for everything. And that was great because you get the phone wire, and it was set up where 25 pair, ran out the blocks, punched it, then punched the wires and ran off to the turnouts and the signals. This was for a CMRI installation. But now, mind you, if you go to places like DigiKey, Newark Electronics, Mouser, you can still get a lot of this stuff, but it's no longer surplus.
Yep.
And priced accordingly.
Oh.
Yeah, actually, for the CMRI, they make these. There are 48 Cat 5s in a 2U, basically panel connector. So what it's got is on one side, it's got 48 Cat 5, RJ45 plugs for Cat 5s. And on the other side, it's got 48 sets of 8 punch down blocks. And just ideal. You can do all your you think about 48 Cat 5s, that's 48 devices terminating. So it's 48 signals, 48 turnouts, 48, 24 detector blocks. So a couple of those can handle a fairly large, CMRI installation.
Yeah.
By the way, just as a connection, David, you should talk to Fred at some point if you didn't see what he did on his layout, because he looked at JRMRI and he decided it was too complicated and too challenging, and he used a different control system. So which sounded very interesting. So.
Yep. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing the layout is I'll try JMRI, and then if something else comes up for me to try, it's a way for me to putz around and just run that one interlocking and try it on, find something that works before I move on to my planned, hoped for future layout.
Because there are a couple of other software packages available that are interesting, I think, to look at. Should be probably considered.
I think CTS was one that was mentioned.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one I use.
That's the one Fred uses. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's an interesting, because I kind of naturally think of JRMRI and the CRMRI stuff and the Chubb stuff and all that, but there are a couple of alternatives.
I've had very good luck with it.
I have a question for those of you who are involved with 3D printing. Another project I'm working on is an engine house, and this is the entrance doors on the end of it. This is a British prototype, and I got the files for this, the STL files, from a guy in the UK who's making these. And then I took it to Rick Brzezinski, who's one of the members of the Fremo N Club here, and we did a print of this on his resin printer. It looks good this way, and you can see all the detail of the rock stonework around the edge. But the problem is it warps and it gets convex. And he says this is a problem with a resin printer that you might not get with a filament printer. And if any of you had any ideas about that, I'd appreciate your comments.
Well, if you're going to print it resin, you may be able to print it thicker, use more material, and then as soon as it comes out, as soon as it's cured, actually right before it's cured, what I have done actually with this is put it on a flat surface, and I put a sandbag, or actually a bag of shotgun, a heavy bag over it, and it flattened it pretty well to the table. Otherwise, what it would normally take to make something more rigid would be ribs and all in the back. Printing it with filament FDM, you'll lose, especially in that scale, you'll lose some resolution. You'll probably see the layer lines.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we did, if you take a look at this again, this is the front panel, but there is a back panel, and supposedly these sandwiched together, but you can see they both warped and it came out that way. Now, we also did a side wall, and this had a little bit of a warp, and then he tried inserting it, actually it was this one, and then he tried inserting it at a 25-degree angle, and that came out a little flatter, but these are about twice as thick. But it was using the same printer.
Yeah.
And I didn't know is it possible. I haven't tried that. I just got these. If I just put those like in some hot water and then glued them together and clamped them, would that flatten them out enough?
It would probably, because they're bent opposite, it probably would flatten them out somewhat. Before I did that, I would try the hot water or some, just really mild temperature and flattening them, like I said, on a flat surface, something that will totally hold them down while they cool.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try those.
Then glue them together, and then you'll have the strength to for them to stay. The one curve won't overtake the other curve.
Yeah. I might want to look online and see what kind of the safe temperature is for the resin. I tried flattening something I did on the filament printer, and I didn't pay enough attention to the oven, and it turns out it gets warm enough and things get pretty dicey pretty quick. I don't remember how it temperature is. My oven starts at 135 degrees. So, you might want to see if at 100, see what your oven will run at the lowest temperature and see if you can put it in there, let it come up to temperature, and then take it out and do like Fran said, wait the heck out of it and let it cool from that temperature flat.
Okay, give that a try.
PLA,
A heat gun or something for like shrink wrap or something like that.
Yeah.
Heat shrink.
PLA, the filament PLA, yeah, you can try with heat, but the thing is, PLA, when it starts to melt, it all starts to melt and it deforms to its own standard of tension, and the whole shape will be gone.
It just falls apart.
The resin, I think it really doesn't melt. I think you just change the chemical, or you change some structure in it a little bit where you can flatten it. But I have not tried melting the resin.
So the other thing is, could you try printing those two end pieces as a single piece instead of printing those two?
Yeah, I don't know if he might be able to combine the files so you can do them like that.
So I think in FreeCAD you can import the STL files and they stay as objects, and you could probably import the two of them and maybe put them back to back and then generate a new STL file as a single file with them back to back. I mean, whoever did the original design should be able, but if you're printing them, it looks to me like whoever designed them thought they were printing on a bed printer. And my suggestion is print them back to back and print them at 45 degrees in your resin printer and put supports under them. You'll have to trim on the inside. So in other words, make the outside wall, the top on 45 degrees, the inside wall and the downside, it'll have supports under it. So you'll have to go in and sand the supports off on the inside wall, but they'll be on the inside.
That'll be okay.
That way you get it double thickness. That probably would be the way to get it to print. Then it'll print like the other ones. It'll be a little less bendy.
I'll have him try that. That sounds good. The only problem with the wall ones, the way they're designed, the back has insets, which is where we're going to drop in etched window frames in there.
Cool.
And then that supposedly gets another piece. I don't have all the files yet, so we just did this one side. And the top notches are for roof trusses that drop in there.
So, the other thing you could do is, if you're doing it in resin, is print the whole thing as a single unit, the four walls, and then put a floor on it. And that way you'd have a much more rigid structure.
Yeah, well, we will do that. It's just that he didn't have the capacity on his bed to do that whole length in one piece.
45
degree. I'll try that.
Yeah, so and the only reason I know is one of the guys was showing an engine he printed and something I was watching, and it was fairly long, and the only way you could fit it in the print bed was to print it at a 45 degree angle. So you actually get, I mean, if you think about the print bed not as a flat but as a geometry, you can actually put it in there at an angle.
Yeah, I could try it. If I did the whole wall at once, it's almost 10 inches long.
Then that's not going to work. Yeah. Oh well.
And
I was thinking it was small in end scale, but
yeah, well, it's a full length engine house, so it has to be done like in three sections of the wall, and then it's about a 4-inch width on that end piece that I showed you. That's about 4 inches across or so.
Yep.
And for something that thin, when I say heat it up, I'm thinking probably not quite as hot as your hottest tap water.
Okay.
Don't go to town on it and go slow. Little bit more, hotter than lukewarm, and a good flat surface.
Yeah. A microwave wouldn't work on that, I imagine.
You don't know what is going to absorb the microwave more.
Yeah.
You can microwave the water, but then
not the plastic. Right. Okay. Are there different kinds of resins that might be a better application for something thin like that? Because he used PLA.
I am not there yet as far as knowing which resins work better for different applications. I just started just a couple weeks ago doing resin printing. I'd done filament printing for a few years. And so I'm just using standard off-the-shelf Anycubic resin that you get the most common.
Okay.
Gentlemen, I have to leave. I have another Zoom meeting at 11 o'clock, but happy Easter, and we had a good session today. See you next time.
Great. Happy Easter, John.
Happy Easter, sir, and to all of you.
Thanks again. Thanks. I think we probably are hitting close to the time anyway. I guess it's 10:56. So bid everyone a great couple of weeks. Really looking to Fred and Jonathan talking about servos. I think there's a lot of very interesting applications there we can think about. And until then, everybody have a great couple of weeks. Happy Easter. And all enjoy. Sign up, register. If you didn't pull it out of the chat, register for the PCR convention.
Hey, Phil.
Yes, sir.
One question about the registration. It asks for your NMRA number.
Yes.
What if you don't know your NMRA number? It won't let you turn it in until you type some number in there.
If you don't know your NMRA number, send me an email and I'll send it back to you. They send me a Excel spreadsheet. It's how you get the emails from me. I get your emails out of that. They send me an Excel spreadsheet with everybody's email and it has your number in it. So if you don't know your number and you can't find it, send me an email and I'll pull it out of the database.
James, it says, look at your magazine subscription. I'm like, but it comes electronically now.
James, just look at your tattoo.
Yeah.
Well, right. Right.
I may have a paper copy of a card around here somewhere, you know.
Or if you have an old convention registration form or something somewhere, you might have it on there.
Yeah, I just save all that stuff wonderfully. It's in the filing cabinet over there.
If you want to hang on for a second before you go, I'll find it for you.
All right. Yeah, I think it's 1-2 something, but that might be my driver's license.
All right, I'm going to check out for this week, guys. Happy Easter, everybody.
Yeah.
Happy Easter.
Hey, Phil, I don't know if you can see this or not.
I'm
You can't read that, can you? I started searching for stuff.
You just want me to throw it in the chat? I don't think anybody will grab it out of the chat.
Yeah.
There it is. It's the number that's in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I found a couple of stamps from when I was membership.